All right. So the first question that we have tonight is, can a man allow a woman to operate in her femininity and put her survival mode aside if he himself is operating in survival mode?
How can he possibly?
How can he possibly? What does that mean?
Well, I think first you have to examine what you mean by femininity, what you mean by survival mode. And so for me, as a woman, operating in my femininity is being able to lay things down, relinquish certain powers to the man that I'm with, in a sense that he's saying, you know, I got you. You don't have to worry about these things anymore. So if you're asking the question, that to me, that is operating in the femininity. That is taking myself out of that survival mode that I have to do everything myself, that I have to get things done in a certain amount of time. And so when you think about having someone in your life who allows you to operate in that, and you're asking, can I do that with someone who himself is operating in survival mode, thinking that he has to do everything? Or I shouldn't say it that way because I don't know what survival mode means to a man. So, but if he is operating in a mode of survival in a sense that he is struggling, whether it is financially, whether it is emotionally, whether it is spiritually, it's hard to lead anyone and allow them to kind of relinquish something to you because you yourself have not been able to take care of your own. But what do you think? What do those words mean to you when it comes to femininity and survival mode?
So I think that from my perspective, and of course I don't speak for all males, I just speak for Greg. I don't know what it means for a woman to operate in her femininity, right? That would be something that you would have to unpack for me to let me know what that looked like for you, because as a man, I don't know what that means. I don't know how important it is for you to be able to operate in your femininity, especially with living in this day and age where it seems like women are glorying in the opportunity to be out front, right? So I would have to have you unpack that to me, exactly what that would mean and look like to you to be able to operate in your femininity. As far as
so let's stop there for a second. So what do you think people mean when they say that women are masculine or they're operating in their masculinity? What does that mean? Have you ever said that about a woman, that you feel like she's being masculine?
So for me, masculine, operating in her masculinity, and you know, these are terms that I think are real 21st century. Because growing up, man, I'm a 70s baby. So growing up, for a woman to use that verbiage or terminology, it would be, she was very, for lack of a better word, a tomboy, right? So understanding what that means today, man, I need to be educated on, you know. So as I talk to different men and talk to different women, understanding that a lot of men that I've spoken with, they feel like women are they're independent, right? They don't need a man for much. They paying their own bills, they got their own homes, they got their own car. And so a lot of men are wondering, because they grew up like I did, where a lot of men took care of these issues. So they're wondering what their place is now. So men are trying to find their place in women's lives, especially concerning women who are independent, who have everything going on.
Right. So I think we need to kind of step back and talk about a couple of things. So I think that for me, what I hear is that independent women is becoming synonymous with operating in their masculinity.
Okay.
If we are paying the bills, taking care of our homes, doing all these things ourselves, we're these independent women, and I would speak for me as, you know, we're independent Black women, that is somehow coming off as masculine to these men. Mm-hmm. And I think that feeds into what you're saying about they're wondering where their place is. My thought to that would be that independence and masculinity have absolutely nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
They are not synonymous. And just because I'm independent doesn't mean that I can't still be a feminine woman and, for lack of better terms, let the man lead, if that's the way you want to say it. To me, if a man is struggling to find his place in a woman's life or in a relationship, that has more to do with his insecurity than it has to do with her independence.
Okay.
He has to know how to be a man when he comes into a relationship, regardless of how she is and how she acts. A woman that is an alpha male, if that's what you want to call it, or an independent woman, should not throw you off and make you feel like I don't know where I fit in because you have been doing all these things for yourself. We have been placed in a role to do these things for ourselves. Some of us do it by choice. Most of us do it because it is survival. We have to. And so again, it goes back to my first statement that for me to come out of survival mode and operate more in my femininity and still be in my independence, I have to have a man who comes in as a man and can lead and has no insecurities about the fact that I am this independent woman who has done for myself, because there's more than just financial things and monetary things that you can do for someone. And a lot of times, like you said, women are running businesses and doing this, and so this man is trying to find his place. You have to have more to offer me than money and being able to buy a house and pay car notes. There are spiritual needs. There are emotional needs. There are a lot of other things that are needed. And if you can't find your place in those spaces, then I think that, like I said, it says a lot more about the man who's coming into that relationship than it does about the woman and her independence, or, for lack of better terms, her masculinity.
And I'll agree with you in that. I'll agree with you. I think that a lot of those things that many men were raised to believe are cultural things, right? And sociological things. We grew up in an era where men were supposed to do this, and that. But today, where women are doing a lot of those things for themselves, men have to challenge themselves because at the end of the day, we're still men and you're still women. And so how do I lead this woman who is doing all of these things that I was taught sociologically and culturally that I was supposed to do, right?
By stepping in and doing them.
Right, exactly. You're exactly right. But I think that many times, because some of us haven't developed those things, some of us haven't developed spiritually, some of us haven't developed emotionally. We don't have the emotional intelligence because once upon a time we didn't have to have it. All we had to do was throw some money at the issue. Here, take this check, go pay them bills, and you be okay, right? But when you're doing that, it forces me to have to grow up as a man in some areas that maybe I wasn't even taught how to. I wasn't taught how to grow spiritually. I wasn't taught how to grow emotionally. And so now I'm lost. I'm frustrated. And then there's this conflict because I'm still trying to provide the things that I think that I'm supposed to, when you're like, man, I don't need none of that. And so there's conflict there. There's frustration there. But I think the frustration comes, just like you alluded to, it comes from the fact that I haven't grown in some areas, or the man hasn't grown in some areas that are needed in order for the relationship to move forward.
And I'll add to that on the women's side, we are not willing to kind of relinquish that to you because we feel like you haven't grown in that area. And so it's kind of like, oh, well, how do I lay this down with someone who I don't know if they can take care of? But I think it brings us full circle that there's this dynamic, right, between men and women, especially I think Black men and women, of this whole, how do we coexist? How do we have these relationships? You have so many people talking about not wanting to be married. There's no benefit of marriage. This whole 50-50 conversation that happens all the time. And I think that this is a crux of that. This is a part of all of that. We have to understand each other. and we have to understand how we're raised and the things that society puts out there and the things that culturally are out there. On a global scale, and then you have your societal level, just in this country, and then culturally within our communities. There are levels to the things that we learn and the things that we don't learn. And so I think, like I said, it's a huge dynamic. I think we should ask the people.
And I think that also, even before we get to that point, realizing that I'm coming into a situation with some issues. And many times I don't even know what the issues are, because there are certain things, and this is my premise, there are certain things that are not going to be uncovered until you're in a relationship. While you running out here by yourself, you fine. But it's when you get into a relationship with another person that some of that stuff begins to surface. Right? Because there's a level of intimacy that can only happen with a partner, right? It's not going to happen with your friend. It's not going to happen with your mama. It's not going to happen with your sister. It's only when you're in a relationship with someone that you are developing some intimacy with, that you love, that some of these issues begin to surface. And then we have to address them then. And it's only when we begin to address them at that time that we can move forward. Right? Because you took me through some stuff. And I get it though, because most of us come into, especially when you're when you feel in your 30s, your 40s, some in our 50s, and you find yourself single, you've been through some stuff, right? You've been through some hurts, you've been through some pain, you've had your heart stepped on, you've had your trust broken, and we bring all of that stuff, whether we believe it or not, we bring all of that stuff into our current situation. And so we challenge people and we make people prove themselves, just like you made me prove and continue to make me prove myself. That's just the reality, right? Because we hey man, we're self-protecting creatures. We ain't trying. We've dated some people who stepped on our heart. You've dated some suckers. That's fine. And so now you're trying to vet me and prove to yourself and help me prove to you that I'm not one of those guys. And that's just really as it should be. And I think that a lot of men get frustrated with that process. And so having men to understand that, you know what, hey man, listen, we're not in our 20s anymore, where we throw caution to the wind. All she got to be is cute. All he got to be is cute. And we're going to ride it till the wheels fall off. No, man, hopefully we're much wiser than that now. Right? We're not just giving our heart over to anyone that look good or we find cute. Man, we are making proper investments in other people and allowing them to make proper investments in us.
So, great points. Even though you throwing jabs at me.
I know.
Listen, the question though. So I answered the question, right. And I said, how could you possibly lead, even though we've unpacked kind of what the femininity is, what the masculinity is, what the survival mode is. So now that we've kind of unpacked that, your response to the question is what? Can
a man allow a woman to operate in her femininity and put her survival mode aside if he himself is operating in survival mode? And so my answer to the question is, I believe it's possible, but I also think that both people have to understand where each other are. Right now, if you have a woman that understands, hey, you know what, this guy, he may not be where I desire him to be economically, but man, this guy, he's a spiritual guy, and this guy, he's emotionally intelligent, and he may be living hand to mouth, but we can work on that. I see he has a plan. I see he has a vision, and he begins to operate in that, and I'm willing to come alongside him and assist him in that. And because I see that he has something to offer in these other areas that I know I may be lacking in, right?
So we're going to give people a chance to respond. The question is out there. We want to know whether or not you feel that this is possible, that a man can actually be in a relationship and allow a woman to lay these things down and operate in the femininity. But that's another topic, because what you were just talking about is, I think it's called dating potential. And I think that's going to be the next topic that we discuss in our next podcast. Do should you, especially at our age, our big ages, right? Should we be dating people that have potential, dating potential, instead of dating someone who's, if you go by your 80-20 rule, who's already 80% there? And I think a lot of us wind up dating that 20%, and so that can be an issue.
Okay.
But we're going to stop this one. We're going to let you guys let us know, and we'll be back next week.
All right.
All right.
A little bit, and then we cut. Cut.